What's that?
You didn't put an X on it.
I didn't put an X on it. Well, then isn't it Wednesday again? No.
Yeah, 2 Wednesdays in a row.
It means we have to do Barbie again. Oh,
Yes.
come back.
Yes, now we get to hang Barbie.
All right. So again, those of you guys online, these are approximate answers. The evens weren't due, so the odds were due. So 15.3, you got a range of those answers. Like 14 would be okay for that. Something close. All right. So our test is going to be on Monday. My board is extra finicky here tonight, apparently. Yeah. Yeah. So, in 5.1 and 5.2 is when we were writing everything in slope-intercept form. Those two sections went really closely together. Just write something in slope-intercept form. And I just realized there's something on here that we don't even need to do, so we have to cross part of this off. We didn't do section 5.3. So we just can cross that one out. So we didn't do 5.3, we won't test on it. That was one of those sections where it's in different form than slope-intercept form, but slope-intercept form is definitely the more useful of the two forms. So I'm going to stick with that this year with you guys just for time's sake. So our y equals mx plus b, where b is our y-intercept and m is our slope. And again, we use that slope formula. I'm going to write it down here because we're going to need it for this problem anyway. So the slope formula that I made you guys memorize for the last test, you'll want to know that again. I can't remember if I asked it for you on the test again like we did last time. Probably do. Yeah, I have blanks for that again, so similar to the last time, where I just ask you for those formulas. If you know them, you get the points. If you don't, it's just 2 points. So it's not something to get yourself bent out of shape about at the start of the test, but I want you to have the right formulas to work with. Guys, your phone should be put away, please. Put away. Tori, I'm going to take it away if you don't put it away. Okay, then I'll take it from you. You can go to the office, okay? You can't, because I asked you to give it to me, and you refused, so you can go to the office or give it to me. That's your options. Okay, I'll give them a call. All right, so guys, if you guys could work through these 3 examples here. So try working through, see if you guys remember how to find the slope and the y-intercept. So if you guys have the slope here, and then we have a y and x, we're going to find b, or x and y, sorry. We're going to find our b in this case. So problems like this, obviously, we're going to do a lot of these. We've been doing a lot of these throughout the time in this chapter. But hopefully at this point you guys are pretty comfortable with them. we're gonna go ahead and set up to find b. So 4 minus 6 is a negative 2. So there's our b. Sorry, I didn't leave us enough space here. I guess we don't need this one. So then I write my slope-intercept form with my negative 2 for my m, and then negative 2 also for my b. Now letter B was a step tougher. They don't give you the slope. We have to find the slope, which is why we needed that slope formula, which is why I wrote it down there. So again, what you guys are going to do, you're going to write that on the top of your paper and get those points right away, and then you'll be able to use that formula throughout the test. So we have to find our slope. Not yet, no. Okay, thanks. All right, go ahead. Just answer the phone and use the phone instead of teaching today, huh? So we do 3 minus a negative 2 over negative 4 minus 6. 3 minus a negative 2 becomes 3 plus 2. So 3 plus 2 is 5. Negative 4 minus 6 is a negative 10. So in this case, my slope ends up being a negative 1/2. I want to simplify it, and there's only one negative, so I know the slope's going to be negative. Now the negative can be either on the top or the bottom. Yeah, go ahead.
What I stick in place for had the 5 as a negative?
Yeah, so very good question. So he was asking about where the negative has to be. It doesn't matter, top or bottom, because if you subtracted, I'm assuming the way you got the negative on top is you did negative 2 minus 3 and then 6 minus a negative 4. The negative can be on the top or the bottom, in the middle, as long as it's not in both spots. No, perfectly fine, good question though. So we have our slope. Now we need to find our b. So we're going to pick one of the 2 points to use. I just don't want to forget that it's a negative 1/2. And use this as my x and y. It doesn't matter which one you use. So negative 1/2 times 6 plus our b. Good news is negative 1/2 of 6 is a pretty easy number to work with. It's a negative 3, very good. What's that? And then we're going to move that 3 over. So b ends up being 1. Now I don't need to see all these steps, you guys, but if you make a small mistake and you have your answer with just your slope and your y-intercept with it, and we have so check I think your subtraction was just, you should have been adding 3. But so like if you just had your equation and it was wrong, I can't do a lot with that. Like if I just see your equation, let's say you flipped the fraction or something and that made your b wrong, just know that the more steps you can show me just helps me to figure out where you went wrong. So if this was like a 4-point problem, I could be able to give you partial credit. Oh, no, it's okay. Okay, thank you. All right, bye-bye. Oh, phone never rings. Okay, so now from the graph, this one shouldn't require a whole lot of work. What can we pull off this graph? What do we know just by looking at it? Yeah, Trista?
The y-intercept.
The y-intercept. So we can look at the y-axis, that's our y-intercept, so that's our b. So our b is -4. And then how about our slope? How do we figure that out? Somebody else, but thank you. How do we figure out our slope from the graph, you guys? Yeah. Yeah, you can just count rise over run. You could go back and do this formula. I think that's a lot more work. We just basically can pick 2 points and do rise over run. So up 3 and over 2. I can tell it's already going to be a positive. Rise over run tells me it's 3 over 2. So that's our equation. 3 over 2x, and then -4. Okay? So like I said, we skipped section 5.3, and it's something that, I mean, it'd be good to know, but it's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to, like, lower your score on the ACT. You're going to be fine without knowing point slope form. It will be something we'll probably see in like algebra 2, maybe pre-calc, you might see it here and there, but don't have to stress about it right now. I don't use it in geometry as well, so it's definitely not quite necessary. If you're totally dying to know what it's like, what it is, you're not missing out a ton, but I'd be glad to show you. So moving on from that. Then we went to section 5.5 and we did parallel and perpendicular lines. So talking about the difference between parallel and perpendicular, what do you guys know about parallel lines? What's the important stuff we need to know? Yeah, Clayton? They can never cross. So that's important to notice, like on a graph, they'll never cross. My board's like having the day of its life here. I wouldn't be able to do that if I tried. It wouldn't work for me. Okay, here we go. Let's try it again. All right. They never cross. What else do we know about slope? Yeah. They have exactly the same slope. So the slopes are the same. So they're going to have exactly the same. So whatever the one slope is, the other one's going to be as well. Yep.
Different y-intercept.
But that is important. So they do have different y-intercepts. So different b. There's a different b. That is good to know because if it was the same b, that would mean that they're actually the same line. And so that's not unique enough. Then perpendicular do cross. How do they cross? At 90 degrees. So cross at 90 degrees. So all of our intersections here on the wall, all the little intersections on your grid, those are all 90-degree intersections. Now those are straight up and down. They can be kind of diagonal too. And so just being aware of that. But now the slopes, this is what we need to remember to do with them. What are the 2 things we have to do? Trista?
The sign is flipped.
So flip sign. Actually, yeah, I'm not use the word flip. I'm going to say change the sign. That's okay. And then what's the other thing I have to do? Yeah, Clayton?
You have to flip the fraction to the bottom.
Yeah, you're going to flip the fraction. Which is another reason why we're okay with improper fractions. Because if it's a mixed number, that's really confusing to flip. So we're going to flip the fraction as well. We call that opposite reciprocal. But if you don't know those words, it's perfectly fine. So you change the sign and flip that fraction. So this problem here is asking us to do the 2 different things. So if you notice, there's a part A and B to it. It asks us to do perpendicular in part B, and then A is parallel. So we're going to kind of break this into 2 problems as we go through this, just to practice both of them. So parallel, and the equation they give us is y equals 3x plus 2, and they give us the same point for each of them just so we can work with the same numbers. But if it's parallel, what are we going to take from that equation? What are we taking? Yeah, Reagan? The slope. So our slope for parallel means it's going to be the same. So we're going to use that 3. Parallel, so our slope is 3. And they give us an x and y already. And we're going to use that to find our b. I'm not going to use their b at all. That's like not useful information. If anything, it's just distracting. Now this one would be a really horrible one to have to graph. I would probably not tell you have to graph it because none of our graphs go up to 37 or whatever, or down to 37. So I'll tell you guys right now, if on a test it ever tells you to graph something like that and it's like way off the graph, it probably means you did something wrong, because typically I try to make everything fit really nicely, especially if it went 1 or 2 little dots off, but this is like 3 times off the graph. But that doesn't mean you're wrong when you're writing an equation. If that's all we have to do, you're probably okay. So now we take our m and b and write our equation. Please don't forget that x, you guys. That's one of the big things I see when we do whiteboards and stuff. You forget the x, and it seems so minor, but it's so important to have that x there. Otherwise, it's 3 minus 37, and I should be able to combine those. It's like a whole different problem then. So make sure you include that x. All right, now we're going to perpendicular. So it's kind of the same process, except what do we do with our slope? Yeah. Yeah. So remember, this slope is 3 over 1. So to flip that, it's going to be a negative 1/3. So you flip it and change the sign. Now I won't guarantee all your b's are nice whole numbers on the test. So just a heads up on that, so they're not, it's not that you're wrong. Most of the time they probably work out pretty nicely. I try not to be too horrible about that. But we have our x is 12 and our y is negative 1. So I'm using all this information for my perpendicular line. I'm not even going to look back at that other stuff anymore. So I don't want their slope anymore now that I have mine. So I flipped it and changed the sign. Sorry, that looks really bad. So I think my board is really slow when the internet's slow because it's sending stuff over from my desk, and obviously that's a long way to travel. But just a little bit finicky here. Negative 1/3 times the negative 12. What do we get? 2 negatives is going to be a positive. 1/3 of 12, just it's like dividing by 3. So just 4. But feel free to use your calculator if that's what makes you more comfortable. If you just double check that. Don't let that be like, oh man, it's a fraction, I've given up on this one. You know, like you guys can do it. So it should be a positive 4, right? Oh no, it's not supposed to be a negative 12. Stop me. I was fixing that problem and I don't know what I was doing. It's supposed to be a negative 4. I'm looking down at your guys' answer. I'm like, what you guys do wrong? So, so that should be a negative 4. And then we're going to add 4. Sorry. I was so hung up on fixing that, and then it was wrong anyway. So 3 is our b. And then we take our m and b and put them back into our equation. So this is the perpendicular equation. All right. So the next questions ask us if these lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So 2 of them are equations. And then the other two, we're trying to find the slopes. So we're gonna have to take a minute to look at their slopes. So, wanted to give you guys a second, at least to try letter A if you haven't already. Some of you guys are already done with it and like ready to move on to the next thing. We'll take a break after this. So, you guys can try letter A here. I'll give you guys a second and we'll talk about it. Just so you know, for letter B, you don't actually need the B's. Once you know slope, and yeah, you don't have to check. It's just, especially since those were going to be such awful numbers, you didn't have to do that. Unless maybe if they're parallel, you might want to check them, but I probably won't give you one that's going to be the same color.
This one is the same. This one you have to divide by 2.
I think yours is flipped. The section you have to have. But when you do want to simplify, so
Yeah.
so simplify the fraction. If you're stuck on how to get A started, we want to get it in y equals mx plus b form. I know there's not a ton of room there, so I want to figure out what y equals mx plus b is, because I want to check what the m is. So for each of these, I'm going to try and figure out what m is, so the y needs to be alone. So in the first one, what am I going to do to get y alone? What are you going to do to get y alone there? Divide by 3. Yep, so we're going to divide everything by 3. So this divided by 3, this as well. So I get y equals, what's in front of x now? Now that I divided by 3. 1/3. There's like a 1 here that we don't really write. And then 6 divided by 3 is going to be a -2. So that's our first equation. So we're going to check that and compare that with the m in the second. So here I'm going to divide this one now by 6. Now just quickly looking at that, it's going to look the same. What do we need to do?
By B and by equation.
Well, so we can simplify that fraction. It's kind of what I think you're trying to get at there.
Yeah.
So 2/6, we can simplify. What's 2/6 simplified?
1/3.
It's 1/3. You just divide each by 2. So it's fine to simplify that fraction. And we now have those same slopes. So these are parallel lines. And the b's do happen to be different. I probably on the test am not going to give you one that they're the same line. It's kind of cruel at this point. It's something we'll talk about later in the year. But right now, it's going to be parallel, perpendicular. It's not going to be a same line. So just a heads up on that. It's going to be that or neither. So like if the slopes aren't the same or opposite reciprocal. So then here, this one we need to use our slope formula. So I have to figure out the slopes of each of these. And again, I do want to simplify if I can. So 3 minus 1 over 5 minus 2. That one's nice. It doesn't need to be simplified. That's 2/3. Then the bottom one will go 0/6, or 0 minus 6, sorry, I'm not talking right. And then 7 minus 3. Oops. So we get a -6 over, -6/4. Now, -6/4, can that be simplified? Yeah, those can both be divided by 2. So this becomes a -3/2. I'm comparing these slopes. Negative 3 over 2 flipped is 2 over 3, and then it becomes a positive. So these are perpendicular in this case. But it is important that we simplify them, that we don't just like look at them the way they are and leave them there, okay? So we're gonna take a break. Do you guys wanna do Would You Rather or Pictionary? Would you rather? Yes.
It's completely split.
Yeah.